Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here with one of our guest co-hosts, Zilun, Zhao, and he comes to us with a background in journalism, in writing, and in English. So, Zilun, what are you up to now? And we'll go back in time and talk about you as a kid. So, what are you up to these days?
Hi, Luki. Thank you for having me here at your SIWIKE podcast. And so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Zilun, and nice to meet you all. Currently I'm working as a lead researcher for a research organization in Toronto, and I have a background of journalism. It was my favorite occupation and industry that I wanted to work in, because my father was an experienced journalist from China, and my uncle, so my dad's brother, is a writer-reporter at the Chinese national paper for almost 3 decades. So family was the earliest motive influence to me to get into writing industry. And it really passed me an attitude that many people maybe do possess, but a lot of people do not have, which is never give up. And
That's perfect. So I'd love to learn a little bit about what Zilun was like as a kid. So what are some of the early fond memories that you had, but what were you like as a kid?
As a child, I was a very kind kid, and I was a good kid growing up. You know, my parents taught me how to behave and have a good manner, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like everybody else that is nice, kind, and friendly. You know, work hard and all that. But specifically and luckily, I sensed that I'm into writing since a very young age. There was a time that I had a dream at one night. And when I woke up in the next morning, I didn't wait at all. And I wrote down what happened during the dream. After that, I brought the story to my father, and he was really impressed with and recognized my writing ability. It was a fight or a war with alien or something, which I can't clearly remember now. But that was the first time that I found out that I really love writing as a passion, and potentially that dream ended up with what I've been doing for the rest 15, 20 years now.
Cool. And do you still have the story somewhere or I don't know if you kept those records?
I should have it in a notebook, in a kid's notebook, and I could look for it.
Yeah, maybe you can pull it out and just add to it and turn it into more an adult story. But yeah, what were some of the other influences that you had growing up? So obviously your dad and your uncle were big ones, and you had kind of that writing there. What about some other interests or hobbies that were into, or was it just purely writing and you're only interested in writing?
Well, writing is one of the biggest passions and interests for me. But I also have some other interests and hobbies. Like I love, English is my second language, but I always loved this beautiful language, and I feel this language is very beautiful. And and for the hobby side, I love swimming. I love watching soccer games and sometimes play it myself with friends. And so my parents always influenced me with their attitude, never give up, and the best or nothing. They told me for doing something, if you don't want to do it, just don't do it. But if you do want to do it, try your best.
It's amazing. Definitely good words of advice. Can you walk us through a little bit about kind of the early writing days? So obviously you had the time where you wrote your story as a kid. How did kind of that interest in writing develop? Like, did you continue to write on a daily basis, or do you have like an English, a Chinese teacher that kind of influenced it, or what was the journey to writing like for you?
Thanks for the question. That is a great question. So the early stage of my writing, it was my interest, with my incentive or motive, and my father really encouraged me to do this. And when I was turning like a teenager age, we had some high school assignments for writing. But of course, I could do it well, but I wasn't satisfied with the assignments, the school assignments. So I was reading blogs at those times. And one of the biggest and most famous writers at that time for me was Han, a Chinese writer.
Okay.
And he was really famous, and he was humorous, funny in his writing style.
Okay.
And so his writing style had a huge influence on my writing style. He's also critical. He's also critical thinking and writer. And he wrote about, well, I guess my writing style was affected by his writing style. So in my writing style, I started to discuss something like more deeper topics, not like childish anymore, but more like an adult way of thinking.
Sounds good. And was most of the writing that you did, was it more kind of fiction writing or nonfiction, or what sort of things did you write?
Most of the writing was not fiction, because I would call it creative nonfiction stories.
Okay.
So that's a literary style of writing, and it's more like a reporting and investigative style.
Okay.
And but I do also have sometimes write fictional short stories, not like a novel or book, but short stories. Yes.
And walk us through kind of that decision. So obviously growing up, you had writing in the background, and ultimately you have to choose to do a degree, kind of college or university. What was that decision like? Because, well, growing up Asian, the typical thing is like doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer. But obviously you have like parents that are and family members that kind of set the path for you for writing. So how was that conversation? Was it pretty easy to get into journalism, or have those discussions with family, or was there more complexity to that?
Yeah, that's right. So absolutely, I had a conversation with my parents, and excuse me, I know most students, international students or young immigrants from China, they would take business or accounting or computer science, not really much like a Bachelor of Arts or students. So, but I wanted to try something different. I wanted to try something unique, because I deeply believe that what makes me Zilun, and for who knows if I could possibly make a difference within the impression of Asian and other race, how they look at us. So I tried my best, and I tried really hard. I built a calendar that regularly keep writing and sometimes publishing articles, and that was a not professional, but almost a professional way of training myself and training the way of thinking and way of writing. Regularly write and regularly publish.
And so your parents were pretty supportive of you in terms of going down the journalism path, and obviously you had some of the family ties, so it probably wasn't that hard. Walk us through like coming to Canada, because obviously you grew up in China, and then what was the journey to come to Canada to pick Centennial, and then ultimately to do a BA in media at the U of T? How did that happen?
So I grew up in a country where, first of all, there was one child policy, so I was the only one child in my family. And I don't have brothers or sisters, but I do have some cousins. So that's that. And when I was about entering university or college in China, so many people were choosing to study abroad. So just like them, I always wanted to take a look at the foreign countries, foreign culture, and North American life. So I applied to 2 countries, so the US and Canada. And finally, Canada took me. So I came here, and of course, I experienced some culture shock and at first, but luckily, things became well. The the coming to Canada was a turning point of my life because this country really trained me, educated me on with the post-secondary education, and I'm grateful. I'm so grateful to this.
Cool. And talk to us, if you can, a little bit about the culture shock, because I mean, some people hear that word, but people experience it in different ways. What was kind of the first thing that you remember? Like, oh my gosh, this is totally different. I'm in an alien world, that sort of thing. What was that? The first few couple of culture shock experiences.
Yeah. So, well, there are many culture shock experiences. For example, in China, we don't for example, if we go to grocery store or supermarket, we just buy the thing without paying another extra tax.
Okay.
I'm not against any tax or something, but I'm just throwing an example.
Yep.
And the way of lifestyle and the way of making new friends and even the way of learning at school are different.
Okay.
And for the first 2-3 years, and gradually it affects my psychological status, if you understand.
Yep.
And so I guess everybody who's from China or another country has to face this and overcome the difficulty.
Yeah.
And sometimes difficulty is a good part of life. It makes you grow up. So I'm grateful.
So if we were to give folks that might come here a bit of a preview, so you mentioned like learning and making new friends is quite different. So let's talk about learning. How is learning different here versus where you were in China?
Chinese education is famous for testing education, everything for the exam, the score. But after I came to Canada, I find the Canadian university education or college education is really focused on your ability overall, not just for exams, but also how do you feel your life satisfaction at the school, and how do you engage with professors, instructors, how do you communicate with your peers, classmates, and there are helps available to you if you ever need them.
Right.
So this isn't very possible in Chinese university. I guess because I've never been to a Chinese university, but in China, I mean, in high school, we don't have this for sure.
Sure, for sure. And then, so for that, it sounds like, I mean, folks are very competitive. They need the marks. You need to be at the top of your class in order to do that. Wow. Here, it's a little bit different, where it's a little bit more kind of broad and not, well, testing and your assignments and your exams are one component of it, but kind of that holistic. That's why they have lots of campus events and different clubs and stuff like that for you to join as well. So talk to us a little bit about making new friends. How is that different than what you experienced in China?
Before I came to Canada, I thought making new friends, even making with new friends with other races like white people or black people or anybody, literally anybody, would be easy. That was my guess. But the reality was like it wasn't that easy at first because of the language barrier and the culture shock. But everything becomes better gradually. After a certain period of time, you really settle down. You really feel the Canadian vibe, Canadian lifestyle, and you work hard at school and everything. So for me, it was just like after a certain period of time in 2014, all of a sudden I made more friends. So maybe that was why.
What do you think was the turning point? Was it just like a matter of time and suddenly you were able to do it, or is it because you learned the language more, you understood the culture, and by having a combination of all those things, you were suddenly more able, or was there something different that might have helped you make those friends?
Yeah, the turning point means that if I did not came to Canada, I would be still in China and with a different lifestyle. So I decided to immigrate to Canada and became a Canadian. So that I think that is a really major turning point in my life. And in terms of making friends, well, first of all, you gotta speak good enough English,
Right.
and you have to know the Canadian lifestyle or Western lifestyle, and learn their way of how they speak, how they make friends, how they communicate, and work hard. Of course, work hard, study hard, work hard, but also you need a break from hard working.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where communication is challenging when you don't learn the language. So you need to practice and get into that. Because I do find that some newcomers, because Toronto specifically is so multicultural, you can find your group from your home country and then not speak English for a long time. And that often becomes a challenge because then you don't learn the language and then you don't feel comfortable and then you can't understand the culture as much. So it sounds like that some of the guidance is to be more immersed in kind of the local culture and definitely practice more English so that you can communicate well, and then that'll probably lead to making more friends. So
yeah, exactly.
And one of the questions I have is like, what are some of the key milestones and decisions that you had in your life? So obviously coming to Canada was a big one. What about the decision to go from college and doing another university program? What was that decision like?
Yeah, so after graduation from Centennial, and I worked for a company I worked for a company for almost a couple of years. And I realized that I need a higher education, a bachelor degree. So that is exactly another milestone for me, because studying at U of T is one of the best universities in the world. Is really something that I didn't dare to imagine before. And my mom really pushed me on this. At a certain period of time, I wanted to give it up, but my family attitude is never give up. So my mom and my dad, they told me you should keep going apply for the application and keep it up and keep up the good work like you did in Centennial.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I thought about it and I agreed. So I continued with the application and all that stuff. Luckily, I got admitted in 2020 last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I started my new journey, which could improve the future of me for the next milestone.
And so it was 2020. Was all of it online? Did you do the program completely online?
Yeah, I've been doing U of T courses online because of the COVID.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so the pandemic really hit us hard.
Yeah. What was that experience like? Because obviously you did your college education. That was in person, right?
Yes, it was in person.
What was the like because of COVID? How did that online instruction? How did it differ from the previous college experience?
Oh, in terms of commute, it really saved the time and resources and cost of commute. It's also more convenient for handing in assignments. You just upload it through Quirkus and hit submit, and the professor on the other end will see it. So everything is convenient. But sometimes I do feel that maybe studying at campus in person make students feel more real, if that's the right word.
Okay.
So that's the difference. And the second difference is I believe that if students go to campus to study, we have a better chance of communication.
Right.
If we have questions, we can just ask our professors in their office hours. I mean, for now, professors also have office hours,
Sure.
but not a lot of people attend based on my observation. Yeah, so that's the two major differences I noticed.
Yeah, and it's been challenging time for a lot of folks that have kind of the online programs. But I mean,
for students in other parts of the world, they have to adapt to this Toronto time zone. So
yeah, especially those who decide to move back to whatever their home country was, and then they have to work off of Eastern time zone or whatever time zone their university is, and that's always a challenge. So. Talk to us a little bit about the vlog that you started up, the vlog. How did that get started up?
Right. So so thanks to a YouTuber in Canada, I watched his channel for a period of time, and he's a really cool photographer, YouTube videographer, and he's from Canada. And I followed his channel. And one day I started an idea. So why can't I try something? I've learned photography and how to make simple videos on my own. I mean in Centennial. So I just started doing it, and initially it was a bit hard. But the more times you've done something, the better you get. So today I have created around 10 episodes, and they're included in intro and some mini doc and some carol stuff for preparing for the professional work in the future. Yes.
Sounds good. So it sounds like that you're kind of on that road to become that famous journalist later on. You're making a brief stint in research. So tell us a little bit about how you got into a research role.
Yeah, research. One second. I have a notes here. So because I have a journalism background, which is super writing oriented, and of course requires lots of reading, all kinds of reading, such as literary, academic, news, books, novels, economics, politics, history, you name it. So with all these experience from my background, I gradually possess a qualification that, in my opinion, is quite important. So that is detail oriented, or in other words, attention to detail. And about this April in 2021, this year, one of the U of T management staffs sent me an email and asking if I were interested in helping a research company. So I was glad, and after a careful consideration, I believe I do have all the qualifications or skills that are needed for this type of role. So I decided to join the research company and a very supportive team.
Cool. Sounds like you're starting to leverage your kind of writing and reading skills and kind of that detail orientedness to kind of be where you are right now.
I'm trying to make a transition and keep my options open on the table.
That sounds good. So if you were to go back in your career and give yourself some SWIKE, the stuff I wish I knew earlier. So to younger Zilun at various points of his life, what sort of SWIKE would you share?
I'd say if I could, I would start my university life right after came to Canada, because Canadian colleges are very nice, and I'm always grateful and thankful to my college, Centennial College. But university is a standard in my opinion. It's a standard for today's young students, and it is a long-term goal, and which requires hard work for 4 years, or for some people even 5 years. So if time could return, I would start my degree first, and then maybe consider college advanced diploma or something. But I'm grateful to all my experience.
That's great. Yeah, I've heard a lot of folks that are combining them, because oftentimes folks would do one or the other. But there's a lot of people that are going to college and then university, like yourself. And there's some people who complete university and decide to go to college as well. So it seems to be that a lot of folks are investing more in their education and in different things. Some of them are trying to figure out what they want because their undergrad or their university and college are totally different. But some people it's just like, you know what, I want to further my education. And the college programs tend to be a little bit more kind of practical and more specific, whereas the university ones tend to be a little bit more theoretical, but and more general as well. So, what are some other pieces of SWIKE that you'd have? Maybe one or two more, if you have others.
Work hard. Work harder and be real with yourself, and don't be too hard on yourself. Of course, work hard and study hard, but don't be too hard on yourself. I mean, if you need a break, man, just take a break, and yeah. So that's it.
It sounds good. So yeah, obviously hard work is definitely key to success. When you put in the effort, you'll see the rewards. I like what your parents said, where well you do it well or you don't do it at all. Like do it your best or you doing that, or don't do it. Because I find that some people do it just because, right? They take a class and just pass, right? But they don't actually put in the effort to kind of put their best in. But if you're there and you're going to be there in the meeting, in the presentation, in the class, whatever, do your best, right? Because oftentimes it's that effort that's there. That being real with yourself, that's always a challenge because there's all these societal influences. Everyone wants you to become like them or whatever. But I echo what you say about not being too hard on yourself as well, because you will make mistakes and there will be problems, but it's up to you to kind of pick up and grow from them later on. So yeah, where can folks connect with you if they want to reach out to you, and what are some of the future aspirations that you have, and what can we look forward to kind of connecting with you and learning from you in the future?
Yeah. Folks can find me through LinkedIn. Just type my name, Zilun Zhao, and they can find me. I have a professional profile picture over there. And for future aspirations, I really hope that at this stage, I hope to take more research projects, and hopefully they will go very well. And of course, with the good luck with my U of T study.
Perfect. So thanks so much, Zilun, for joining us and sharing your insights on your path to journalism, and then also on your path to research. And hopefully we'll have you back for a future episode.
Thank you, Luki. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at LukiDanu, LukiDanu, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.